Hi, this is the module Elements Performance Data within DataMiner Fundamentals. In this module, we'll take a closer look at the performance data or trend graphs of those parameters inside an element. So we have an element, we dive into that element, into the parameters, and those parameters are being tracked over time to have that history perspective of that value of those parameters. And that's basically the graphs or the trend graphs or the performance data we'll be looking at in this module. So first of all, before we will start, we will take a look at the trend data. What are we looking at? What kind of granularity is there available in the DataMiner system for those trend graphs? And then we'll dive into the layout, see how that works and how to load those graphs there, and what the graphs have in terms of features and capabilities. We can also combine them together into trend groups if you want to do so. And there's also a special item, histogram, to have that different perspective on the history. And we have some examples in the slides here as well, but we'll do lots of demos as well. And there's a small exercise at the end if you would like to do so. Now, before I start, there is a package available called Anomaly Detection Tutorial on the catalog, and you can deploy that on your system, any DataMiner system that is connected to the catalog or the cloud. For instance, a DAS system, we have it on our training system. So we have our training demo system that I've been using before. So underneath this folder, we have a number of items that are basically contained within that package. So you can see in the slides that's the same, but the anomaly detection is in front of it. So if you deploy that package, it will create this folder with all those elements in there. The nice thing is that each of those elements have one cool parameter with a cool history. Just be aware the first time you need to click on generate data, and it will basically do a bunch of history sets. That's a feature of DataMiner to fill in the history of that parameter. And it has immediately a nice trend graph with some nice goodies in there in terms of anomaly detection and things like that. So just one time you click on it and then you have the trend graph available and you can take a look at the anomaly detection. But it has a couple of nice examples in there to play with. So this is already deployed on our training system over here. But if you want to deploy that, you can just go to the catalog. You can search for anomaly detection tutorial there, and you can just select that, deploy that onto your system. So make sure you select your organization, you click on deploy, you select your demo system or whatever DataMiner system name you chose, you click on deploy and it will install those elements. But as I said, I already have those here. Next to the training platform with those elements, and I have a Microsoft platform there as well, I will also be using the Zine platform. So the Zine platform, so you can see both of them have a different background, the white background and the black background, just so that you see if I'm on the Zine or the training platform. The Zine platform is also available for you, so you can just go to Docs and search for Zine there, and there you will find that how you can connect to zine.skyline.be, as I already mentioned also during the introduction. So those are the two systems I will be using mainly throughout these sessions. All right. So first things first, the trend data. What are we actually looking at? Which kind of trend data is available in a DataMiner system? Well, typically we will have two possible options on any of the parameters that are activated for trending, that is real-time trending and average trending. So as an administrator, I'm able to activate those two options for any of the parameters. Maybe jump back to what we had before on the quick link in the previous module. I showed you that there is a small icon next to the parameters that are activated for trending. Well, so these first three parameters here are activated for trending, but this fourth one, total processes, and the other ones below it, not. That's because the administrator configured it for those three parameters to be activated, the trending, and the other ones not. And here you have some more. So that's a decision of the administrator, and we will also take a look on how to do that ourselves in the configurator part of this training sessions. So next to that, I want to mention that there are two possible trending options. So as mentioned in the slides, so there is real-time trending and average trending. Now, as indicated here, real-time trending stores every single change of a parameter. Yeah, since a parameter can change quite often, like a total processor load, every couple of seconds, a new value, and that can be a massive amount of data. So typically, to go a little bit further back in history, we will rely on the average trending. And the average trending will store the average value in a certain time slot. So what typically happens in a DataMiner system, the default values are after real time, we will then look at 5-minute time slots. So for 5 minutes, we will store the average value, but also the minimum and the maximum. You can see that actually in the trend graphs here a little bit, you have a line and you have like a zone around it. That's the minimum and the maximum. So that minimum and maximum is also being stored together with that average for every 5-minute time slot. And we do that up to a month or 3 months, depending on your configuration. You can go back a month, 3 months, or even further. If you go beyond that period, you will rely on 1 hour time slots. Then we have 1 hour time slots where we can say like, okay, in a 1 hour, we have a certain average and a minimum and a maximum again, and that goes up to a year or even several years. And if you go beyond that, we have a third possibility where, for instance, you store the average value for a day, and then we can maybe go back into history for like a decade. So that's how it works, the average, and you can configure those slots, the 5 minutes, the 1 hour, and how long it's being stored in the settings. But that's more configurator administrator stuff. So here we just be aware that we have the 5-minute slots. If we go further back in time, we have the 1 hour slots. So if we zoom in, we might have more or less details depending on which period we look at. Now, to come back to that real time, let's take a look at the example we have here with the total processor load. So we drill down into the total processor loads. By default, the system will load last 24 hours. Let's maybe first go a little bit further back in time. So I go to last week and I go a little bit, I zoom in last week somewhere. If I will zoom in, I expect only 5-minute time slots. So here it's like 16 hours, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If I zoom in, you can see that the block, let me zoom in a little bit more, not too much, not too little, not too much. So you can see at 4 o'clock, 4:05, 4:10, 4:15. So every 5 minutes, there's a new slot. If I would go back a couple of months, it would be 1 hour slots. But if I go back to last 24 hours and I zoom in the last 24 hours, I will actually see, well, let me maybe zoom in at a nice hour, like 10 o'clock here. If I zoom in at 10 o'clock, you will see 10:02, 10 o'clock, 10:02, 4, 5. So you can see this is way more than 5 minutes. This is like a 5-minute window here, and it's showing a lot more detail. Well, if I zoom in even more, I will see that it actually goes up to a line that shows me in 30 seconds several updates. And if I would even zoom in a little bit more, you would see 10 seconds later, 20 seconds later, 30 seconds later. So within 10 seconds, I have 2 updates. So every 5 seconds, there is like an update. So that's a massive amount of detail. So if I zoom out, automatically, I'm going into averaged data when I zoom out. Well, actually, a small trick there that I immediately want to show you in the right-click menu. If you want to know if there is real-time data, yes or no, there is an option here, show most detailed data. If I activate that, you can see that this one will now not show the averaging, but the most detailed information, the whole line going up and down at every little 5-second window there, or pulse cycle, I should say. So every pulse cycle is being shown. If I zoom out, those lines are being condensed into this block of data, you could say. And if I go beyond the last 24 hours, then you can see I rely on the average data. So here I have like a 24-hour window. So if I go for last 24 hours, if I move a little bit, you can see this is last 24 hours. That is showing the most detailed data here. Let me deactivate this again and just go for the regular standard layout again. So that's real-time data versus average data. Since real-time data can be quite a lot of data, you need to activate it separately. So by default, typically, if you want to have average trending, you typically activate average, gives you all the trending of last years with a lot of detail. But if you want that very granular kind of debug level of trending, the real-time trending in only a limited amount of time, like last 24 hours or last 48 hours, you can configure that. Then you need to have that real-time trending, and then you can really see every value that we retrieved from that data source for the last day or couple of days. So that's more for debug purposes. You could say that you need this real-time one. Okay, so that's real-time versus averaging. We'll come back to that in the configurator part as well, how to configure that. So be aware of that when looking at trend graphs. You have those two types of trend data. Now the layout, we already looked a little bit at it, but let's have a closer look at it. So we have that layout with our trend graph in there. So the trend graph is immediately being visualized. We have a nice trend graph here. We have at the bottom that preview pane. And that preview pane really allows you to easily navigate as well. Let me show you. If I click on the last 24 hours, you can see the last 24 hours here on the right-hand side up to on a complete window of last week. If I say last week, it shows me the last week on the last month. So that allows me, if I see something earlier this week, to move this to a little bit earlier in this week, or if I want to make it smaller, I can also kind of zoom it in by taking the sides of those windows as well. Of course, I can move my graph here as well by just selecting and moving it, or use my scroll wheel to zoom in or zoom out. I typically use my scroll wheel to zoom in and zoom out. And then to move it left and right, you can just click on it. Be aware, if you right click and you select, you make like a selection where you can zoom in, for instance. Well, if your defaults or if your settings are different, or if you prefer it different, be aware that this is a user preference and a setting again. In the settings window, I can quickly show you, within trending, we have here the graph actions. The graph actions, you can define what your left and right mouse button should do. So if the left, the regular button, you could say, is a pan in my case, so I can move my graph, and the right one is to select a region and zoom. I typically do it with with my scroll wheel, but you could also have a hotkey for that. So you have some more settings to play around with that. So that's the preview pane, which can come in quite handy there. Also, the buttons on the upper right hand side come in very handy to immediately go back to last 24 hours, or immediately to go to the last week, or even the last month. And then you have a year view. So this system was up in about beginning of April. Beginning of October, so a couple of months ago. So we have here the convenient buttons to switch between those predefined sections, but you also have a custom one. If it would be needed, you can customize an exact time frame, a special one as well. And be aware that in the right click menu, there is also a couple of additional ones. The last hour is in there. and also the year to date is in there. So this is the year, but since it's only been activated in October, it's not complete year we have yet. So be aware that those actions are also in there with a couple of them in addition. Okay, so the preview pane to navigate around the graph itself and the buttons on the upper right hand side. The third item that is mentioned here is the trend prediction. So you will see a trend prediction here indicated from the now line onwards to the right hand side. So we can see indeed that our trend graph stops at now and is being extended with some kind of prediction. And you can see it kind of like detects a steady line forward into the future. Now to give you a little bit of a nicer example, let's go to the Zine system, and we have here underneath the Brussels Skyline HQ, we have the power consumption, and let's take the total. So in this one we do have, let me immediately go to the power active and show it in. So in the general page, sorry, that was maybe too fast. On the general page, you have the sum of the power active, which is going downwards now, 45 kilowatts. And you can click on the graph, and indeed, we're going downwards here. So it immediately detects that trend. And it actually shows to you the power consumption. So you can see a nice graph here. But we can see also some prediction, and apparently it's expecting tomorrow again to be picking up again, and this kind of prediction. And you can actually see tomorrow, the day after, etc., and then flat. So what basically happens here? It's detecting a seasonality where it says like a daily curve, but it says like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then in the weekend, nothing. And then again, Monday, Tuesday, etc. So it kind of nicely detects that daily pattern, but also a weekly pattern. And within the day, it detects that before lunch and after lunch, there's a difference there because of the charging of cars, which typically happens before lunch, and in the afternoon, most of the cars are being charged already. So you can already see that nice graph. And if I take a look at it, let's say week to date, you will indeed see, no, let me zoom out or zoom in a little bit, that indeed you have this weekly behavior, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and then 2 weekends. Note here we have a public holiday, so you can see that Wednesday was here a public holiday. That's why it was different. Okay, so that's a nice prediction. And note that as I zoom in or zoom out, there might be a long-term or short-term prediction. If you right-click on your trend graph, you do have the long-term and mid-term, and there's also a short-term prediction. So underneath the trend prediction, typically it will just automatically scale in or scale out. You could force it to mid, long, or short term, but typically it will nicely evolve as you zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so that's a word on the prediction that is available there in your trend graph. Now, to take a closer look at the trend axis as well. So we have the y-axis here, and you can see there is some nice color coding here. Let me go back to my this one here. So here we also have some color coding where we generate some alarms whenever we're going higher or lower. Also on this one, for instance, our total processor load, so we can see the 80 and 100% CPU utilization. So you can nicely see the alarm limits you have on there, the thresholds. And what is nice is on the x-axis, you can also see when the parameter was an alarm. So you can see here this is the cable modems out of service. The cable modems out of service were raising up to the level where it went into a critical alarm. So here it was critical until the time it went below it again. So here there was an alarm active during that period of time. So that's when the actual alarms were being generated. Now, let's take a closer look at what is happening here. So if I zoom in, I can see clearly that I have here a period where my total processor load was going into alarm, but I don't see any alarm here. Well, that is actually indeed possible. And the reason is because in this case, we have a hysteresis configured. So hysteresis means a delay on generating the alarm, because with a total processor load, we do expect that indeed sometimes it goes to 100% and then it goes back a couple of seconds later. We don't want to generate each time an alarm, but if it stays on 100% for like a minute, or maybe 5 minutes or whatever, then we want to generate an alarm. That's the hysteresis. Quick peek. It's a little bit more configurator, but in the alarm templates, we can see a hysteresis on here of 60 seconds. So indeed, it waits 60 seconds before it generates the alarm. So that's why here a small peak of a couple of seconds was allowed, and it never generated an alarm. So it remained green on the bar, on the alarm bar at the x-axis. So the x-axis is showing that alarm bar with the actual alarms. The y-axis is showing the alarm thresholds as they are configured in your alarm templates. Okay. At the bottom, we can also see the current value with some details. So if I move my mouse over the trend graph, then we can see like a small dot is following my cursor. The blue dot. Well, the blue dot is actually, if I move out of the window, then it remains where I was. You can actually see the actual timestamp and the actual value. So I have 35% selected with that blue dot. Or if I go to the higher peak here, let me move out my mouse on that higher peak, and then I move out my mouse. Yes, I can see it's 72% that is on that peak there. So that's your peak of your current value, but you can also open it up to also see not only the average value, but also the min and the max value is being shown there. And the current value is actually of the current total processor load that is also being shown. I will come back to this collapsible pane here, because in this collapsible pane, I can add some more parameters. I can combine my trend graphs with multiple graphs in there. I'll come back to that later on. So just remember that we have the current value or the selected value there in that bottom panel, which you can open up to see some more items in there, or some more like the min-max. Yeah, one more thing there is that now graph, that now line, which is also interesting to note, is that as mentioned here in slide, it's updating automatically. This means if I go to last 24 hours or even just last hour, for instance, what will happen is, or actually if I will zoom in, you will actually see if I zoom in very deep into the graph, this is automatically updating. So any trend graph, also if you zoom out to 1 day view or something, if you leave it open, your trend graph will continuously update with new values coming in. So you can leave it open on a screen to see last day, for instance, in there, or last hour. And of course, also the now remains nicely on the same position. So your graph continuously shows like the sliding window of the last hour or 24 hours or day or week, whatever you selected. So whenever the now line is in the picture, it will continuously update. If I move it out of the picture, it remains still. So if I bring it into the picture, it will move again. So that's the difference. With last 24 hours, it's the same thing, but you cannot see it moving that fast, of course. Just remember that it does this kind of behavior. Yeah, there's also that expand graph. I already showed it on on a table. So if you have a table, you could expand it. Also here, you can expand that if you want to take it a little bit bigger. You want to use the full screen real estate to work with this trend graph. You have that expand button to use all of your monitor screen to take a look at all the details of the trend graph. Okay, so that's about the layout and the things I wanted to mention here. Now let's take a closer look at the graphs itself. So let's take a look at what we have as features around that. So we were already playing a little bit with the graphs, but you will also find a couple of light bulbs there. The light bulbs are helping you out with relation learning. That's another analytics feature. So not only they are predicting towards the future how your trend graph will evolve, they are also trying to find related parameters that might be of interest. For instance, if we go back to our demo system here, we have the power active. Well, we have a light bulb there on the upper right hand side for our power consumption of the building here. So last week or last time, it doesn't really matter. So if I take the trend, the light bulb icon, it will say a couple of suggestions. Oh, maybe there's a copy of this element, so this is related to it. Of course, it's related because it's the same thing. But also, it will say the outside lighting and charging poles are related to this trend graph. Maybe you should add it. And if I click on there, it adds that graph immediately to it. So, and here it shows basically the relationship between the total power consumption of our building and the outside surroundings, and the outside lighting and the charging poles. So as I mentioned, there is more charging before lunch than after lunch, because typically in the morning you plug it in and more charging is happening, and in the afternoon more cars are already fully charged. So that's where the relation is found. By DataMiner, automatically it will suggest, so we're looking at this parameter, maybe you need to pull in another parameter because it might be related to your view you're currently looking at. This is a great feature to find really immediately related parameters when you're investigating a problem. I have a second example here. So we have the trend bulb on the parameter itself, but for instance, if I take a look, if I'm not mistaken, it's not on this system, but it's on the Zine system. We have backups activated on our Microsoft platform. So if I take the Zine Microsoft platform, Microsoft server, and if I take a look at the disk, you will see, for instance, that the free disk space, if I take a look at that, every night there is like a little dip in there because the free disk space is shrinking a little bit and then freeing up again because a backup is being created. If I take a look at it, the backup is being created and then it's being copied. So if I can actually make a selection of this one, and then you have a light bulb here as well. And if I take a look at it, it will immediately search for things that are related. For instance, it will say, well, the network adapter speed, let's say the total speed here, it's related. Well, indeed, on the same time, if the backup is completed at the same time of the backup, it will also show you a bump here, you could say, because here then it's being copied. So the network traffic is related, but also the read rate, for instance, or the total rate will be related of the disk. Not only the disk space, but also the disk utilization or transfer rate towards the disk is being used, etc. So it's immediately showing you some related parameters. So when you're investigating a problem, you look at the light bulb on the upper right hand side, or you make a selection and use the light bulb of the selection. So to make a selection, I use the right click and I select a region, and then I can zoom in or use the light bulb here to have related parameters. So remember, if it's not the right click, you can go to the settings to configure your left and right mouse button how you wish to use it. So that's a great usage of the relation learning of the analytics module, which is coming in very handy in here. All right. So that's relation learning to show you related parameters. Now, if I want to combine different parameters together, I can easily make a combination of trend graphs together. I was already doing it with the light bulb. There is also a manual way of doing it. So if I go back to, for instance, just the total processor load alone, there are two ways of combining it together. That is by going into the trend graph. Yeah, maybe it's not really related, but I can take that total element again. I can drag and drop it onto the trend graph. And what happens? The bottom panel immediately opens up and adds this element total on there. And I can select that sum of the power active again and click on show trend graph. So you drag and drop another element on there. For instance, outside lighting was related. I can drag and drop it on there, and I can just take the power active as well on this one and show the trend graph of those three parameters together. So those are three parameters together, but of different elements, but you can also have them of within the same element. And this is, for instance, the Zine Microsoft platform, the total processor load. But if I want to have the memory added to it, I can add a parameter. Immediately the same one is added, but I can go, for instance, for the commit charge total and then click on show trend to show the trending of those two parameters, memory and CPU utilization. Notice instead of using the cross there, you also have a plus to duplicate the commit charge total and then, for instance, I make it the inverse one. The free is in there. No, the free virtual memory. This is the inverse of the commit charge. So you will see that indeed, if one goes down, the other one goes up for the memory parameters. So that's how you can combine different parameters together. If it's for another element, you just take the element from the surveyor, you drag and drop it on there, and then you can use the plus or the add parameter to have multiple parameters within the same element or of different also for the other elements, you can, of course, you can still change the element here as well. So I can also in here go to total, for instance, and use the total and then select the power active. So you can click and make those changes with changing the element and the parameter in here as well. Okay, so that's how you can combine multiple trend graphs together into a nice combination of trend graphs. Okay, some more things on the right-click menu that I want to mention. So we already took a look at the jump to last hour, last 24 hours, etc. For each curve in the on the canvas or on the display, you can also select certain things to show min-max, for instance, to remove it again, the curve, things like that. The y-axis setting, let's take a look at that one because I always find that quite an interesting one. Let's reset again to just total processor load alone. Sometimes a certain parameter, it's kind of difficult to look at it in its perspective, meaning that, let me load that again, meaning that sometimes it's difficult if you're zoomed in, like what are you looking at scale-wise on the y-axis. Therefore, it is convenient sometimes to go for the y-axis settings, and instead of doing an auto scale, you can specify the range from 0 to 100 from the connector, and then just click OK. And then you have 0 to 100, and you can see that, yeah, basically from 0 to 10%, you're never in there, and also the top one. But now also if you zoom in or zoom out, it doesn't change when you're moving out spikes, yes or no. While if I go for the auto scale again, I'll reset it again to auto, then it's again default. So if I take the bigger peaks out of it, sometimes my trend graph will go up or down a little bit. It scales a little bit up and down automatically if that peak on the right hand side goes out or in or out or in. Therefore, sometimes a fixed scale can be convenient to see the actual scale. Okay. Trend prediction, I already mentioned that the scale of the prediction, if it's high precision, short, long term, that's long term. But if I zoom in, the short term is being shown, or the precision, so that's zooming in, zooming out automatically. So the automatic should be fine in most cases. The statistics is also a convenient one. If I take a look at the last 24 hours and I want to know the average CPU load or total processor load of this value here, I can easily go to statistics and I immediately see that we have an average here of 25.15. It's also displayed on here. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit, maybe a lot on each other. So you have the average. Let me just disable all of these things. So you have the average line you can activate. You have the mean deviation you can activate. And you have the standard deviation you can activate. And also a second and a third. So that's how you can activate or deactivate those items on there and see them all together. You can copy to clipboard and these kind of things. So you can play around with those things. So statistics, average, mean, and average deviation, mean deviation as well. Okay. So yeah, then you have a couple of options. You can print, you can save your image as a PNG, but also the copy is then the same thing. You could basically say, but you can copy it and then paste it into an email, for instance. If you want to have that data available, for instance, in an Excel or something like that, you can use the export to CSV. So if you right click on there and you export to CSV, you can export that total processor load, everything, or a custom data set from till and the real time or the 5 minutes. And if you go for the 5 minutes, you can also then choose a line graph or block graph, which basically means that here we show a block graph. For 5 minute window, we show the beginning, or we have a point for the beginning and the end of the 5 minutes, so that it's a block graph. But mathematically, if you want to do calculations, sometimes for the 5 minutes, you just want to have one dot in the middle with the average value. And then it shows basically a line graph from one average point to the other average point. So those are these kind of options, little advanced options you can play with. So if you export it, you have it in CSV, you can basically mimic this graph in Excel or use that in other tools. Show the most detailed data. That's what I played around with already. So that's that last 24-hour window, which is being shown with all the details that we have. And then the expand tags. Let me show you an example on that. I do have here in Amsterdam the Microsoft Server 03 CPU utilization. If we take a look at a little bit a longer period, here we have what we call tags. So you can have certain patterns that are being detected, and you can put a pattern detection tag on there, so that if it comes back now and then, it will detect those items. Well, actually, let me zoom out so that we have both of them. So if I move my mouse over it, you can see there's a highlight underneath it, and this one as well. Well, this simple option, expand tags, just always shows the highlights. That's the only thing it does. But while we are at it, so we have that pattern that we can detect. So we can actually select a region there. So we had the zoom in, zoom out option. Zoom in, zoom out we played with already. We had the highlights that are the light bulbs with the related parameters. And the last option we have there is the tag we can add on there. And then we can say, for instance, this is a backup being taken, and apply that. and then it will basically add a tag on their backup, and then it will also detect more of those patterns here in the past, because those are the same pattern. This one is a different pattern, so this is a backup, this is a buffer overflow. So that's the difference that it detects between those patterns. So it nicely makes sure that only the correct ones are being labeled there as backup. So if you activate that expand tags, it highlights everything nice and clearly. It's a personal preference, you could say. So the expand tags, yeah, the show percentile, maybe go back to the zine. So there is a possibility to show the percentile line here as well, a nice visualization. Optionally, you can show that as well. Add to dashboard is deprecated, that's no longer in there. The trend patterns are then the patterns that you have added, that you can also manage them in here. So I just added the backup one if you want to delete it again, so you can also delete it from here or manage it from here. The buffer overflow was in there, so I'll leave it in there, and it will continuously detect those. So you can play around with those patterns as well. Okay, so that was all about that right-click menu and lots of goodies and features that we have there. One more thing I wanted to show a little bit in some examples as well is on our anomaly detection package that we added here. We have a couple of those examples that I mentioned where we could generate some data. Let's take a quick look at that. So we have an audio bitrate here. So if we take a look at that history, we will be able to see that there are actually a couple of spikes in there. But what I want to show here is that alarm bar at the bottom is gray, but there is also the anomaly detection bar here, which is indicating if there are any anomalies. So here we can see a level shift and also a level shift at the end. But the color coding is also interesting, because the color coding, this one is darker gray because it's more, yeah, it's a higher peak, so it's a more fundamental one. So you can see there's a level shift here that is shown and indicated there. So the level shift, the audio bitrate, CBR, VBR, variable bitrate. Oh, I didn't need to generate that again. Sorry. Let me see if it will now still be active. So in this case, you can see that you have a line here which is almost constant at nearly 100 kilobits per second or kilobytes per second, but there is still something detected here, the variance change, and that is indeed because you can see it a little bit that this is a more steady line. Let's zoom in a little bit. That's a more steady line, and that's a more a higher variance, so it detected also a variance change, and that's a very difficult one to detect because we are at a very low scale here, you could say, only a couple of kilobits difference. So you can see that in the bigger picture here with those bigger spikes there, that this is 100. So this is a small variance. So it's difficult to put a lower and a higher threshold in regular alarm thresholds around it. So therefore, that variance change can come in handy because we can also do alarming on that. We'll talk about that within the alarming module. So variance is being detected here. The cable modems out of service, let's take a look at this one. This one is a trend graph with a daily pattern, people getting up in the morning and going to bed in the evening. So it's a difficult one, but to do alarming on, we will be able to follow the alarm thresholds. But also here a level shift is being detected. So if suddenly something happens and a whole bunch of cable modems go online or offline, it also is being detected. Even if it's within the boundaries of what is expected, you do have a nice detection here of that level shift. One final example here maybe before we move on is this Encryption keys, also here a variance change has been detected from a more stable value to suddenly some peaks that are happening. Typically it's around 10 or 20, and then suddenly it starts to go haywire, encryption key requests. So definitely there's something wrong there. We need to further investigate that behavior. So these kind of examples really help you out. So the anomaly detection really helps you out to detect those kind of anomalies without having to manually look at all your graphs, because it will also generate some information events and alarms whenever this is happening. But also during the investigation of your trend graph, it immediately highlights those items on the trend graph. All right, trend groups, how to combine those trend graphs, multiple trend graphs, we already discussed, but you can also save them. So it is possible when you have a combination made of different trend graphs together to save them and to give them a name so that you can later on easily recall them again as well. Let's take a look at that. I have, for instance, here a trend graph. I want to add another one to it. Let's just take quickly the total again. I add the total. It's a little bit unrelated, but doesn't really matter. So I have two trend graphs that I combine together, show trending. They are not related, but that doesn't really matter. But let's assume that this is something that I want to investigate on a regular basis. And instead of each time having to combine several trend graphs together, I want to save this layout. So what I can do is, instead of just going for show trend, I can now also at the bottom right click save as, and I can give it a name. This is BERT training, for instance, just as an example. Note there is the possibility to make it private. Only I will see it. Only I will be bothered with it. It's a private thing. Or I can also make it the opposite. It's public. Everybody can see it. Everybody can use it. Everybody can change it even. Or you can say, well, changing, I don't really trust my colleagues, so I want to go for protected. I create it, I manage it, I change it, I edit it, but they can only use it. They can leverage it as well, so by just loading it, but they cannot change it. So that's protected. So you make it available, but you protect it a little bit. Okay, I'll just make it a private thing for now. It doesn't really matter here. So I save that, but where is it now? Well, let's close everything down. Let's assume tomorrow I want to check this again. So how can I do that? Well, within the apps, you do have there the trending module, or the trending app or module. And there you will have, it's a private group for me, the BERT training, one click of a button, and it loads again those two trend graphs together. So here I have a couple of other ones as well. I have the TOR22, for instance, with some uplink parameters or some beacon levels together. I do have probably also some cable modem offline. So we have a couple of cable modems, online, offline behavior. So we have some different trend graphs nicely combined there together. So we can see some online, offline behavior there. So those are a couple of trend graphs that I have stored here, or trend groups, I should say, to quickly load them and look at them again later on. So that's what trend groups is about. So you can easily make a combination, save them with a certain name. Remember that private, public, or the in-between protected that you can choose. Okay, so in the trending app, as I mentioned, you can load them again and you can choose between the three different security types. Now, histogram was that special item that I still wanted to mention, because if I go back to my total processor loads, do I have my total processor load here somewhere again? So let's go back to my total processor loads and take a look at my trend graph. I have an tab page here, so I have already looked at the details in the previous session. I have the trending now. I took a peek at the template with the hysteresis there, but that's more for the configurator stuff, so we don't need to be worried about that too much. But next to the trending, I also have histogram. What is histogram? It's the same as a trend graph, but it's a different perspective because I look at my trend data for the last 24 hours or last week or whatever, and I look at it, what is the most popular total processor load, you could say. So you can see it hardly goes below 10% CPU utilization, and typically most of the time it is between 10, 20, 30, 40%, and then it goes down again. Oh, I was zooming in, sorry. Let me reset again by clicking on the reset. And that immediately brings me to the advanced collapsible panel here. So you have a collapsible panel here. Here you can also change the start-stop time. It's last 24 hours I'm looking at. But also change the interval. For instance, say the interval width needs to be with blocks of 10%. Let me apply that. So then it hardly comes between 0 and 10%. 10 and 20%, that's quite popular. And it's the most popular total processor load is between 20 and 30%. The most chance to see the total processor load between 20 and 30% CPU utilization. And it's actually like 35% of the time on that, sorry, I was zooming in again, like 35% of the time on that value between 20 and 30% CPU utilization. So that's how you can see this kind of distribution graph of which are the most popular values, you could say, of my total processor loads. Same thing, for instance, for the threads, total threads. I can take a look at it in history trend graph, but in a histogram, I will be able to see that 4040 and 4050, something like that, is the most popular. 30% of the time, it is on this number of threads, and everything around it is less popular. This kind of distribution graph or histogram is being shown here. So that's the histogram tab page where you can customize the interval as well, so you can see the most popular values in your graph. Now a couple of examples to wrap it up, and I already gave some examples, but we have some others in here. So as I mentioned, it gives you that history perspective. So if you see an alarm on your total processor load, you can drill down into it and you can see how long it was there and how it got there. If it was a sudden peak, or if it slowly degraded and it started somewhere a couple of days before, you will already see that history perspective on there. This is an example with a signal level, an anomaly. It was detected also that there was a level shift in here, indicated with the anomaly detection as well. The relation between two parameters, a signal level and a power, forward power of the satellite environment here. Some cable modems, as I've shown before, cable modems offline, a daily pattern with some outages here and there. The degrading of the total the free disk space, so my free disk space going down, so I will need to make sure with that prediction that I have still free disk space enough in the future as well. It actually does a proactive alarm here, so it indicates that there will be an alarm towards the future, that I will hit 0, but we'll talk about alarming later on. But here the trend prediction is generating a predictive alarm on the free disk space. The daily pattern, the weekly pattern, actually, the days of the week that are available here on my total power consumption of the building, I've shown that as well. The level shift that is indicated here, nicely detected by the analytics module. Here also, even on a daily pattern, an outlier is being detected. This is not a level shift, but is a peak up and down immediately, is an outlier. So the outlier detection is being shown here. I didn't show a demo yet on that one, so that's nice. We have this one here. Here the pattern detection, so a pattern that has been detected or been tagged. So we tagged a backup. We've done that in a live demo as well. So it immediately indicates all the backups that it detects in the past as well on this trend graph. Okay, so as an exercise, you can do this yourself. I've done it already. It's basically creating a trend group. So you go to a trend graph, you load another trend graph together with it by adding a parameter or dragging or dropping on there, and then you save it as a certain name and a certain security level. And then you have that trend group that you created, and you can load it again from the trending app. We've done that. You can play with that as well. So this was the trending module. There's lots of goodies in there. I always find this one of the most interesting modules because it gives you that history perspective. If you're debugging, troubleshooting something, it's the first thing you do. You go into that trend graph to see where it started, how it behaved towards the future, or from the future towards from the history towards now. So that gives you that extra perspective to it. You've seen lots of goodies there, a lot of AI capabilities with our analytics module. So we're predicting towards the future. Anomaly detection is there, patterns that are being detected. So lots of things are being added around those trend graphs to give you all the best and possible tools around these trend graphs here. So I think it was a very interesting one, that module here. So I hope you are ready for the next one.